One of the funny things about driving through Birmingham, especially around Edgbaston, is how the area is this odd balance between the very traditional and the constantly changing. On one side, you've got that sense of history, those leafy roads, those quiet corners where you can almost imagine horse-drawn carriages from a couple centuries ago. And then on the other side, there's that buzz of modern student life, research labs, and people rushing off with takeaway coffee cups. It's a city that wears its different layers of time on its sleeve. Even the drive we're on right now, short as it might be, gives you a little sampler plate of that mix. And as you're heading out, one thing that's easy to overlook is how the trees are more than just scenery. There's a whole urban forest project that's been quietly growing across Birmingham. The idea is to weave a bit more resilience into the city. Shade in summer, less flooding when the rain comes down in sheets, and better air for everyone. Next time you notice a line of freshly planted saplings by the roadside, you might be looking at the early stages of something that, in 30 years, could be towering over houses. It's wild to think how the decisions made by city planners and volunteers now will shape what kind of place Birmingham feels like, long after today's traffic jams are forgotten. It's also worth thinking about how movement itself shapes a place. Driving this short stretch, you're part of a daily tide of people: commuters, students, residents, visitors, each with their own little story for why they're out on the road at this exact moment. Some of them might be headed to the university hospital, a place where life-changing things are happening behind those walls every single day. For someone, right now, this exact moment might be the most important day of their life, whether it's the birth of a child, a breakthrough in treatment, or simply visiting a loved one. And you, just a few hundred meters away, are gliding past on your own errand. That's the strange intimacy of cities, millions of private lives brushing shoulders without even realizing it. Now, if you glance at the architecture as you pass along, it might not strike you as immediately remarkable, but it tells a quiet story. The red brick that dominates so much of Birmingham has a kind of honesty to it. Solid, dependable, a bit industrial at times, but softened by age and weather. Compare that with the sharper glass and steel structures that pop up closer to the university campus, and you can read a narrative: tradition meeting ambition. Red brick was the material of builders who wanted permanence, who wanted to anchor a community. Glass and steel are about possibility, transparency, speed. That conversation is happening silently in the walls you're driving past. And speaking of glass, one of the quirks of modern building design in this city, and in lots of places really, is the obsession with letting the outside in. But what's funny is that if you live or work in one of those glass-heavy buildings, you often end up putting up blinds half the day anyway because of glare. It makes you wonder whether we're designing for aesthetics more than for actual comfort. Then again, aesthetics can change how you feel in a space. Maybe being in a transparent, light-filled environment nudges people to think more openly, more collaboratively. It's a theory, at least. Here's something you might not expect. Metchley, the area you're heading toward, is steeped in deep history. Underneath those modern roads and houses, there used to be a Roman fort. Imagine that. Almost 2,000 years ago, soldiers stationed here, keeping watch, maybe grumbling about the weather just like we do today. They would never have dreamed that one day people would be zooming past in cars, listening to digital commentary, worrying about parking spaces. History compresses like that. The daily routines of long-gone lives vanish, but the traces linger if you know where to look. Every time a spade goes in the ground for a new construction project in the area, there's a chance of uncovering something ancient. You're driving over layers of stories stacked on top of each other, like pages in a book that nobody can quite finish reading. It also makes you wonder what layer we're adding right now. When future generations look back on early 21st century Birmingham, what will they see? The rise of electric cars? The shift to greener energy? Maybe they'll marvel at how we tolerated traffic congestion or how fossil fuels were still in the mix. To them, that might seem as outdated as horse-drawn carts do to us. There's something strangely humbling in realizing that the normal of today is just a temporary stop on a much longer journey. And since we're talking about journeys, let's zoom out for a second. This short drive is part of a larger web. Roads connect to roads, neighborhoods to neighborhoods, and cities to cities. But it's not just asphalt and concrete, it's a living network of stories. Someone driving next to you might be on their way to a first date, someone else to a job interview, someone else to a quiet evening alone after a long shift. When you think of it that way, traffic stops feeling like a frustration and more like a kind of choreography. Everyone is performing their small piece of a bigger dance. Now, one of the freshest ways to look at your surroundings while driving is to notice the unnoticed. The small shops tucked away, the tiny differences in fences and front gardens, the way one house might have an explosion of flowers, while the next is minimalist and bare. These tiny variations are like fingerprints of personality scattered across the landscape. They remind you that even in what feels like uniform suburbia, individuality leaks out through paint colors, garden gnomes, or the decision to put fairy lights around a front porch. It's a quiet rebellion against sameness. Speaking of sameness, let's touch on sound. You can't hear it all while sealed inside a car, but the city has its own soundtrack. In the early mornings, you might catch the chatter of birds, especially if you've got your window cracked.